Hi everybody, welcome to Knits and Pieces. My name is Noelle.
And I'm Kelly.
And we are a mostly knitting podcast coming to you from Southwestern Ontario. Today we're doing a regular episode, which we don't do that many of them anymore.
No, we don't.
Mostly we meet everybody in the Knit Chat Cafe, but this is an episode all about socks. So I shouldn't say all about socks. It's our experiences with socks.
Yes.
Okay. So we're just going to, go through some of the things we've done, some of the different variations we've made, and kind of, if you've never knit a sock before, hopefully by the end of this, you'll be inspired to make one.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, you want to knit a sock?
Yep.
Where do we start?
Well, if I wanted to knit a sock, the first thing I'd have to do is figure out what yarn I was going to make it with.
Okay. Let's talk yarns.
Okay.
One of the yarns that we're going to start with is probably our hands down workhorse yarn and well known.
Yep.
The Croy. Peyton's Croy socks.
Mm-hmm.
This is sock yarn. Reasons why we like this. It's firstly, it's a 75-25 blend, meaning 75% wool, 25% nylon. So that means it's going to hold the shape of the sock really well. And the other thing that we like about this is that it's superwash. And we like to call this a true superwash because although other yarns are called superwash, we still do not recommend that you put them through the washing machine. This one, if this goes through the machine, bad things will not happen to you. So this is a fantastic yarn to work with if you are knitting for a recipient that you are maybe not entirely sure how the sock will be cared for.
That's right. That's right. Or actually for anyone that you know is going to be hard on their socks. Because I find for a lot of my sons, this is a really good yarn because they don't tend to be able to destroy it.
Yes.
Not that they've destroyed other ones. This is just quite a hard wearing yarn. Now, one thing to say about the Croy too, it is a little bit thicker. So be aware of that when you actually start a sock with it. You might actually go up a needle size from your regular knitting. I don't, but then you do get a really nice dense fabric if you don't. So.
And going up a needle size may mean that you need to come down a few stitches too for your sock.
Your sock size.
Okay?
Yeah.
So other things that we like about this, you've got a sample here.
I've got a sample here.
Comes in a wide range of colors, and it's available. It's pretty widespread availability, meaning you can get this at big box yarn stores, and there are also quite a few yarn shops that independently
carry some of the Croy. Yep, it comes in all sorts of variations. Kelly's got a marled one there. This was a striped one that I did. It also comes in solid colors, and a lot of the solid colors are kind of heathery in their appearance. There's a lot of fun bright colors. There's a lot of muted tones. So there is a wide variation in what you can pick when you do a Croy sock. Now, one thing to note about Croy is that the balls are 50-gram balls. So if you're going to do an adult pair of socks, you will need 2 balls of the Croy yarn.
Yes. And if you're doing a shorty pair, 1 ball should do.
Yes.
Making shorty socks.
Yes. Now, all the socks that we show, I will list them all in the show notes so that you can go back and click and, like if you were looking for this one in particular, I believe this one is called By the Ocean. I can't remember the designer name, but it will all be in the show notes.
Okay. Moving on to yarns that we like to make socks with. This one is Regia, and the reason I'm showing this, it isn't that it's exclusively Regia that we are drawn to, but this is what we like to call the German style sock yarn. It has a particular feel. If you feel it against other sock yarns, you'll see the difference, and it comes also in a wide range of colors. Another company that is German sock yarn that we would call it would be the Opal. And
I think Opal is Schockenmeyer.
Yeah.
And I think Schoppel wool also has some that feel similar.
Yes.
It's a great yarn. I have had Regia that comes in 50-gram balls, and I've also had Regia that comes in they had my first Regia that comes in a little 25-gram balls, which is nice if you're looking at heels and toes.
They also have, I know they have a 100-gram that is called Pear Perfect.
Yes.
And you'll get to a certain point in the ball band where there'll be like a bright ribbon of yellow, and that's where you know that your sock has come to an end and it's time to start the next one.
And there's many different,
you'll get a matched pair.
There's many different patterns. Arne and Carlos did a line for Regia. That's one of them. I do believe this is another one. of the Arne and Carlos colorways, but you can see they're quite different. You can have some that look Nordic, some that look more striped. This one is an example of...
This is one, I think. I'm pretty sure.
This is an
maybe
example
not.
of opal. This is one of the first socks that I made. So this sock is I don't even have it in my Ravelry project. So this one was made probably prior to 2014. So this sock is like 7-8 years old, and I love this sock. So this was back when I first started doing socks. I used to do like 30 rows of knit one, purl one, rib.
She's evolved. She doesn't do that anymore.
Yeah, twisted rib.
Twisted rib at that.
And I always did a heel flap and gusset, because at the point when I first started knitting socks, that's the only heel construction I knew. But like, this sock has stood up. I wear it all the time. I love the colors. I can't say enough about the sturdiness of the of the opal and the regia and that type of yarn. So, and it's a testament to it that it's lasted this long.
Okay, moving on then. Oh, actually, before we go, let's talk about these ones too. These are the Katia United socks. These are fun because they come in 25-gram balls. They come in a fairly decent range of colors, and fairly easily acquirable. The fun thing about these is that you get to make up your own striping sequence or patterning sequence, and being that they're 25-gram balls, the cost to purchase is really small. I have a sample here, not on a blocker. And
they do have the colorways. Really they do have, as you can see, like the pink here, they do have pastel colors. They have neutrals in it. And Kelly will show you here, they also have brights in it. So there's quite a wide color range in them as well.
And this pattern, I think, is called Margarita Mix by Lisa Ross.
Okay.
And this was really fun to do. Lots of lace work in there, fun little ribbing pattern on the bottom of the foot, which is a unique addition, and a different heel type because it's not a ribbed heel.
It's still a heel flap. It's
still
just
a heel flap
and gusset, just a different
yeah.
type of heel flap.
Okay. Then we move into indie dyers, and you have a few different styles. So we'll start with something like this, which is a speckled. So this is a sock set by Rose Hill Yarns. We talk about these ones a lot because we really like these. Them. So she typically, for her half skein set, she will do a speckled set, and then she does a 20-gram mini and a solid. We like, these are, now, if we were scoring it in ranges of colors that we love the indie dyed yarn, but in terms of wearability, we both agree that the Croix or a German sock yarn is going to outwear these. Although, having said
not that I've had anywhere
we've
out.
never gone through a pair.
No.
But this is a merino wool blend, 80% with 20% nylon. So the nylon count has gone down a little bit, and because it's a merino, it's soft. This is going to be super soft on your feet. So if you're looking for that, we highly recommend sock sets. And this, she's got a sample.
This is an example. This was the corked colorway, and so this is like a full adult sock. It came with the cream colored mini. So instead of doing the whole cuff, I just did the cast on and a couple of rows in the contrast color, and then the heel and the toe in the contrast color. And I still had some yarn left, so this sock could have even been bigger if I had have wanted it to be. So that's just an example. It's nice to work with that yarn because you don't have a whole lot of leftovers. You basically get the right amount. Like, other than if I've knit like a fairly long sock for a man, I have never used a full 100-gram ball of yarn to do a sock.
No.
So
no. Well, our faded socks.
Yes, but I guess I'm talking about a regular style sock.
Regular sock.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, once you move away from the commercial superwashes, you really highly recommend it that these get washed by hand.
Yeah, and it's not just the wear of the yarn. I mean, it is that too, but your colors will stay better if you hand wash them. So
it is listed as a superwash merino. We're just saying it's our preference.
Yep. And a lot of dyers actually do recommend that, even though it's superwash, that you do hand wash it and lay it flat to dry.
Now, another way that you could go is into the indie dyers that are using self-striping. And this is a fun technique. So if you don't want to do the work of striping yourself and weaving in countless ends,
Mm-hmm.
then buy a sock set that comes already in stripes. This is one of our favorite dyers. Heather of Timber Yarns puts together a huge selection of the striped, self-striping sock yarns, and she's got some beautiful colors.
Mm-hmm.
Then she also sells the minis, the contrasting minis. Sometimes she pairs them in a set, and then other times you are sort of on your own to purchase the minis with the stripe color of your choice. When you purchase the yarn, you will have no idea what the striping looks like, so that's why it's good to check the dyers' websites, because they show you some pretty good samples. And Noelle's got some samples.
So this is a timber yarn colorway. This is called Licorice All Sorts, and I think it was her one that she did around Christmas time a few years back. And the heel that I did in it was done with this, her black color was called Licorice.
Licorice, yes.
And it was done with that. Now this pattern was actually a free pattern. It's probably still free. This is Peel Me a Grape.
Peel Me a Grape. I've done it a few times.
So
I love that pattern.
I can't remember the designer, and it's underneath all these socks here somewhere. I've got it written down, but all of this will be in the show notes.
Yes.
So, but that's an example of, you can put a pattern still in a self-striping yarn. Now this is another example of a self-striping. This yarn is Scrumptious Pearl. So this is just a plain vanilla sock. And by vanilla, all we mean is that there's nothing fancy, in it anywhere. It's just a plain cuff. It's just straight stocking stitch for the body of the sock. It's got a rounded toe, and in this case, I did an afterthought heel. But with a self-striping yarn, it can make your project look a whole lot more complicated than it actually is to knit.
Yes.
And people will be amazed.
They'll be amazed that you put the work in.
They'll think that you switched colors all the way through. But
Yes.
when
This is another timber yarn. So I think this one was Afternoon Tea,
Yes.
right? That I've made. And I've just incorporated, this one's an afterthought heel, 2x2 rib at the top, and then just a simple basic cable for detail. But the colors are just beautiful. Just beautiful. And they're fun. Really fun.
they are fun. You always want to get to the next stripe. You just want to say, okay, I'll just finish this stripe.
They're
And then-
really hard to put
And then
down.
you get to the next stripe, and it's like, well, I'll just finish this
I'll just
stripe.
do one more stripe. Yeah.
So-
And generally, I mean, I've seen these ones are pretty consistent stripes. I think they're 5 or 6 rows depending on your gauge. But some dyers do a thick and then a thin.
Yep.
They alternate. There's a few different variations out there. Treat yourself to some fun with self-striping
Yep.
if you haven't used it. And then the last thing I have here on our table that I want to talk about, and I'm just looking, I don't know if I have any of these ones done yet. I don't think I do.
Yeah, I don't yet, or at least
Okay.
not here.
So this is a little bit newer. I haven't seen this around for too much. So this is a Full Moon Fibers Fall Rituals colorway, and they use the Nebula Eclipse. This is their Nebula Eclipse sock set. And again, it is 80% superwash merino and then 20% nylon. And they sell this one in a set, but I just want to close up a little bit on that yarn. So it's almost like a barber pole effect, and then they over dye that, I think.
And
to get
some
a white-
dyers, I believe, call that a zebra stripe.
A zebra stripe.
It's not like a marl because it's not through the whole sock, because you do get patches of the yarn where you don't have that black marled in there.
Yes.
So it's a really nice effect.
It's beautiful. And then she's paired it with 2 minis that will coordinate. So that's something else to look out for when you're looking at the indie dyers that there's some fun with.
Yeah, and then another one that's one of our favorites is the marled sock yarn. So this is an example of Leo and Roxy. It's their marled sock, but they've over dyed it. So this color is called Pharrell because it's happy.
Happy.
So, and they also do have it in just the cream with the black stripe. I think you might have yours there. And it's basically kind of the yarn that you think of when you think of a work sock, like those work socks from long ago that were kind of like the gray and cream marl, and then they had cream colored cuffs with red stripes in them.
Yes.
But they've done done a whole lot of different colors for your contrasting color in your stripes.
Yes, and if you hang into the end of this, there might be a giveaway. But this is a sample of the marled sock yarn, and it's unbelievably soft.
It is. It's really soft, and the yardage in it is amazing.
It's amazing. It seems like, well, actually, when I was knitting the work socks, I felt like that sock was never going to end. It seemed like a long sock to
I didn't think they were that bad. I mean, I knit
15
15 pairs of them. So I did them for Christmas one year for And that was just immediate family, just for the immediate family. So
Also, again, so this is kind of in contrast to what we've already said. This is a superwash merino. We would still recommend that you hand wash them, but I will admit that my work socks, these are not the work socks, but my work socks have made it through the laundry several times, and they've even made it through a dryer, and they're still fine.
And you know, when we say that too, sorry, I just want to stress too that everybody's wash cycles and washing machines are different. I just want to take all of the risk out of it and hand wash them.
Yes. The socks that I do wash in my washing machine, also I should say, I put them in a little lingerie bag,
yeah,
so that they're not being beat up too badly with the rest of the laundry. And this pattern, I just wanted to showcase that pattern. This is the Get Shorty Ribbed by Irene.
Irene Designs.
Irene Designs.
And just to show you how different a pattern can look in different yarns, I also did the ribbed shorty. What was it called? Ribbed shorty, ribbed shorty.
Get Shorty Ribbed.
Get Shorty Ribbed. Get Shorty Ribbed. But mine is done in bamboo pop. So mine is a cotton bamboo blend. So they were perfect for wearing in the summer. But that's how different a pattern can look just when you change up the yarns that you use for it.
Yeah.
So
you know, that's kind of a testament to get a pattern. It's not like a book where you just want to, well, some people like to read books again and again, but mostly if you read a book, you know, you're kind of done with it. But with a pattern, you can change it up just by changing the yarn.
That's right. That's right.
You can change the cuff. You can change so many things. Okay.
So most of the yarns that we've showed you here are fingering weight yarns, and both Kelly and I tend to knit mostly fingering weight socks. In the last, I'd say, couple of years, there's been a movement. There has been towards DK weight socks, and
for a couple of reasons.
Yeah, well, for one, it's a whole lot faster to knit, and for me, I'm going to show you. I do have one pair, but I only wear them in the house. I don't wear them out.
You could wear them. I think you could wear them in winter boots.
Yep.
We've heard lots of people talk about wearing them in their Birkenstocks. Because you can loosen your Birkenstocks up.
So this was is actually a fingering weight yarn, but I took a fingering weight yarn and I held it double. So, and to me, when you do that, I know a lot of things say it's a DK weight. I think it feels a little bit thicker because, and if you look at it, there's difference in all of your fingerings too. Some are lighter than others, so depending on what you hold together. But there's an example of a DK sock, and this is just a plain vanilla DK sock, and I think I knit the pair of them in a day. So like that's how fast they are.
Fast for you.
They are fast. And then we've had lots of people comment that they like these for wearing in their Birkenstocks, or if they've got clogs, wearing them in their clogs. Winter boots, they make great house socks.
They do.
And again, they do knit up a whole lot faster. So it might be a good starting point if you've not knit socks, because you're going to get a finished product a lot sooner. And all the techniques are the same. It's just the number of stitches and the number of rows that you have to knit that are different.
And something I want to say too, when we talk about knitting socks, most people might think that knitting a sock is a small, quick project because, you know, actually, I mean, you don't get a very large thing. It's not like you've knit a sweater, but an average sock has more than 10,000 stitches in it. Yep. So sock knitting is like a big thing. And, you know, if you are the lucky recipient of a pair of socks, just know that somebody has wrapped their needles more than 10,000 times to gift that pair of socks to you.
Okay. Now this one
is super chunky.
This one is in a bulky weight. This is the Lumi by Fiber Tales. And this is done with a worsted weight or a DK to worsted weight yarn held double. So this is definitely like a slipper sock. But again, the techniques, you've still got your heel flap and gusset. You've still got your toe. You know, this one's got a nice kind of Latvian braid around the top, which normally you wouldn't start a pair of socks with. But again, finished in almost no time because it's so thick and it knit up so quickly. So there are a lot of worsted weight patterns too, especially there are work sock worsted weight patterns. So if you're just getting started and you want to see some results quick, it's a good idea to look at one of those weights of yarns for maybe your first pair. So
you're going to use all of the same techniques from sock to sock to sock. So once you have established that, oh, hey, I was able to do this in a thicker weight and easier to manage weight, then you can move into the lesser weights and the fine tuning of the patterns.
That's right.
And yeah, so I guess we'll leave yarn.
Yeah. Okay, so now you've gone out, you've picked your yarn, And now you're going to start your pair of socks. So what's the first thing you have to do?
Well, you have to choose some needles.
That's right, because we can't do it with our fingers, I don't think. I don't know. I've never tried.
I
don't
don't
know.
think I could finger knit a pair of socks.
I
No,
don't think
I
so.
really don't. That'd be a
they'd
tricky
pretty
heel turn.
loose. So again, just like in the choices of sock yarn that you're going to use for your first project, the choice of needles is also
Very subjective.
yes.
Very subjective.
And it might take you a few times to figure out what needles you like best.
Yes.
So
And just because you like a certain type of needle for a certain type of project doesn't mean you're going to like it for the next.
That's
so
right.
let's just work our way through what you have, and then we'll have a little chat about why we like what we like.
Yeah.
The way I learned to do socks, and I'm guessing the way you learned to do socks, was on the good old double pointed needle.
That's right.
So that is a needle that has a point at both ends. You can use 4 needles, meaning that there will be 3. You have a triangle
Yep.
that you're working on your sock, which is how I learned to do it.
Yep.
Some people, and so then you have 1 needle. Your 4th needle is the one that's knitting around. Or some people knit them using 4 needles. So your sock would be basically in a square.
Yep.
And your 5th needle is working around the stitches.
Back then there was no choice.
There was no choice.
Well, I'm not saying, I guess we just didn't know about the other methods and you really didn't hear about them.
I don't think they would have applied. If you think back, because the
Well,
next thing we're going to talk about
yeah,
are the circular needles. And
Yeah,
if you
the
think
cords
about
on
what
the
we
circular needles
would have
weren't.
been impossible. They were
Yeah.
nylon, right?
Yeah.
So that's a double pointed needle.
Yeah, and they used to come, like the reason that Kelly and I had it on 3 and knit with 1, because that's how the sets all came. They came with a set of 4, but now the sets come with 5 or 6.
And the sets were all metal. And now there's
Yeah,
wood
now they're
options,
wood, yeah.
there's bamboo,
Yeah.
which is, there's lots of options. There's even plastic ones that are out there. And so from there, if you don't want to use, what I find with the double points, I find it slows me down a little bit. Now, there are people who have knit double point. They are diehard double point knitters, and they do lovely socks. And they can probably do them quicker than me because that's what they're used to. But
I just used to pull
it
out the wrong
slows
needle a
me
lot of the time. And that was not fun, putting the stitches back on the needle. So.
It slows me down a bit because I just feel like I'm constantly fiddling,
Yep.
putting, taking that needle when I'm done with it and then moving around to the next needle. So for me,
and
feels
because
a
you
little
had
slower.
so many places where you were switching needles, you tended to maybe have ladders a little more often than when you're using a
Yes.
smoother type join when you're doing it.
So then the next option you could choose is a magic loop method.
Mhm.
And you want to talk about that one?
Sure, magic loop is when you get a needle that's, I would say,
32?
yeah, 32 or longer, depending on
longer,
your
if you're doing
preference,
one
right?
One or two socks.
Because you want that cord long enough because you're going to kind of divide up your stitches in half and you're going to move them around as you go. So you do start with them. They are all on the same needle, but you're kind of only working on half your stitches at a time. So again, it's a lot harder in that case to pull the needle out inadvertently, like it is with the double points. A lot of people use a long circular and knit 2 at a time
2 at
on
a
it.
time. Mm-hmm.
I don't knit 2 at a time.
I have.
On the same needle?
Yes, on
Okay,
the same needle. I don't mind doing it. What that avoids is the dreaded second sock syndrome, whereby you've got a sock finished and you're like, oh my gosh, I had so much fun, and now I've got to start all over again and do the same thing.
Yeah.
I have to duplicate my work. So for some people, they end up with a whole lot of single socks and they just can't bring themselves to repeat that same work. So the general consensus is if you're doing 2 at a time, it may be a little bit of a slower process to get to the finish line, but when you're done, you're done. You've got a whole pair of socks. Yep. And there's lots of people that do it that way.
I find I don't have second sock syndrome. That I find my second sock oftentimes goes faster than the first because I already know the number of rows I'm doing, the heel I'm using, the toe I'm using. Yeah. So I oftentimes at the second sock goes faster. So I just do them 1 at a time. I do like magic loop. I also use magic loop when I do sleeves. The only time, I do more than just magic loop. I like 2 16-inch circulars.
That's my preferred method if I'm going to go with corded needles.
Yeah,
I definitely want to go to the 2 16-inch ones. You still have the risk of pulling out that wrong needle,
but it doesn't seem as bad as the 4 needles.
No. So when you're doing just use this one as an example. When you're doing the 16-inch needles, basically you have a front and a back needle.
Yeah.
So you'll have one needle is going through and hanging off the front, and then the second needle is going through all of the stitches at the back. So you're basically just alternating front to back, front to back.
Yeah.
Reasons I like that is because I don't like the fiddling of the magic loop going back,
because your
pushing it
cord's
through.
shorter, so you're not pulling through as many stitches.
Yes.
Yep.
If you are using metal needles, though, I do find it's a little bit noisier of a process because those needles are constantly
Clicking with each other. Yeah. I don't even
Hanging
notice that.
You don't notice it?
No, I don't notice that.
I like
I think
to
I'm
knit
just
in
so
the
used to
silence
it.
lots
I
of
think
times,
I just-
so I guess I notice
Just so used to it that I don't notice it. But
And then finally, the preferred method that I have is actually I've gone all the way down to a 9-inch circular needle, and it is tiny. It is only this big around. It's the circumference of a sock. And I tried it once and I didn't like it. I felt it was, because I mean, basically the needle points are 1.5 to 2 inches. They're tiny. So you're in there.
Yep.
And I didn't care for it. But our friend Natalie said she exclusively knits on that. And she said, if you do an entire sock, by the time you finish the sock, you'll like working on it. Now, you can't do the entire sock. You cannot finish off your heel or toe with a 9-inch circular.
Too small. Yeah.
It gets too small. So you need to have like that base of 60 or more stitches on a needle. But times that I find it really useful, especially for color work, because in the past, if I've used, for instance, the two 16-inch needles, sometimes you will get a little snugness at the side if you're carrying colors in and around the corner of the sock. So you'll get what's called laddering because of the tension when you're pulling off the cord from your first needle onto your second needle. So I find that the 9-inch one completely avoids that.
Yep.
And then the other benefit of that, of course, when we're talking about doing color work on small circumference, you can knit the project inside out as well.
Yep.
And that will help you if you have any tensioning problems. There's a few tutorials that we're going to mention throughout this episode as well that are on my Tangled Stitch channel, and one of them is for knitting color work inside out, and I will insert that tutorial here.
There's just an example of an all over color work one. This is I can't remember the name of the design, but I know this one is by Summer Lee. And because it was all over color work, even though 9-inch is not my preferred, if I'm doing all over color work, I use a 9-inch circ because I don't want it's much harder to complete your joins when you're carrying 2 or more colors. So it's a lot easier, I find, if you're doing a color work sock, to do it on a 9-inch circ. And again, I do it inside out so that it keeps it looser because you're bringing that strand around the outside as opposed to around the inside.
Yes.
So
those are basically the needle types, but then what we haven't talked about are the needle materials. And the two, I guess, most common is going to be the metal or the wood.
Yep.
And I like different needles for different purposes.
I like metal, unless I'm on a plane, and then I take wood.
But what I really like, I like using the wood needles, and I have the 9-inch, I have a 10-inch wood needle. What I like the wood needles for are any of these German sock yarns. I like the way the wood feels on this fiber, so I will often switch up. The other issue that I get is I'm a pusher, so I'm using this finger to constantly push as I'm knitting, and the chagus, although they are very, very nice to work with, they are sharp. I've
only ever had that happen twice.
And in the winter, when my hands get a little drier, I've punctured my finger more than one time in a winter. And let me tell you, it's a hard injury because you think that, okay, I'll just avoid that spot. No, every time I'm knitting, I will keep hitting it.
Yeah.
So that's another reason for me to switch up to wood needles, is to give my fingers a little bit of a break, because they tend to be a more rounded point, and I don't find that I'm going to get a puncture from that.
Yeah. And I just want to say too that I know that Kelly, once she did a whole sock on the 9-inch circ, was convinced. I did this whole sock in a 9-inch circ and I still wasn't convinced. So again, everybody's different. I find because I think when I throw, I don't take my hand off the needle. So I'm probably more
we have a different
than,
knitting. Yes, we have a different knitting style for sure.
And I just find that little 9-inch circ, I have to take my hand off. There's not enough to kind of, I don't know why, but I did do this whole one, and I could have done it a lot faster on my other method. So maybe and I had to do it I actually had to do it continental, and continental is not my preferred knitting method. I think I would get faster at it if I continually did it, but you just tend to go back to what your muscle memory and what you
Absolutely.
mostly do. So anyways, so you might be convinced after one sock and you might not.
You might not, but it's worth a try. It's worth a try.
I mean, I'm glad that I, if I ever had an injury that made this hard, like at least I could maybe go and do, it's a different motion. Maybe I could do.
And my favorite 9-inch circ is the Haya steel, not the Haya sharp, because they are super sharp, but the Haya steel has a blunter tip, and for me it's the perfect little needle. I guess I like it because I also like to carry a sock around in my a purse or a bag all the time, so not having to deal with additional needles or cords, just having a tiny little project that just, I can fit one ball of yarn, one sock, and a tiny little needle. I can just pull that out anywhere and kind of inconspicuously knit a few minutes away. So so that's needles.
That's needles. Okay, so now you have your yarn.
Yes.
And you have your needles. So now the next thing that you need to decide is what style, how you're going to knit this sock. So there's basically two constructions, and this is overall construction. You can either do it top down, where you knit the cuff first and knit down, or you can do it toe up, where you start with the toe and knit up.
Work your way up to the cuff.
Yeah. I have to say my preferred is top down.
I like a good toe up sock.
I'd say my preferred. I'm not saying I don't do toe up.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because I like the cast on of a top down, as opposed to the cast off when you do it toe up.
That's fair. That's a fair consideration. And I was going to say, ultimately, if I could only knit a sock one way, I think it would be cuff down, and only because I do not like to rib, and you have to rib. So I like to do that first and get that out of the way. I would much rather do a toe than a rib.
See, I don't even look at it as getting it out of the way.
So that's kind of like getting the icky things out of the way
I
first.
would pick the toe up because I want to get into the body of the sock faster.
See, that's like, it's when you eat a meal, you save the good thing on your plate for last. So I guess I would prefer to do a toe than a rib any given day.
Yeah, but having said that, there's different reasons to do one or the other.
Yes.
For toe up, your yarn management can be better, because if you don't know, or you're not positive if you've got enough yarn to do the leg of the sock the length that you want, if you do it toe up, you've done that foot first, because the foot has to be the right size.
Yes.
The leg can vary, but the foot has to be the right size. So if you've only got a certain amount of yarn and you're not sure, you're probably better off doing a toe up.
Yes.
Another reason for toe up, having said if you don't have enough yarn, you want to get the foot done first, because you can't change that measurement, and then you can adjust your length of your leg. However, if you want to use all your yarn, then toe up is still a preferred, because you can do your foot the proper length, and then you just can keep on knitting that the leg of that sock until you run out of yarn.
Your yarn. And
that's
I'll show an example of that. This takes a while to load onto a blocker. This is the Shirley Bryan deconstructed fade, and she dyes this gorgeous faded yarn to make a beautiful sock. So we both have used her yarns, and we do definitely a toe up because we want to get every little
drop of the
bit.
yarn. Yep.
So you can see how long the sock is.
Yeah,
it just kind of goes on forever. They're like knee socks.
Yeah,
almost.
mine actually do come up to my knees.
Your knees are a little closer to your heel than mine are.
But it also looks really good, just like if you've got your boots
so you can
on
wear
and
it
just
as
like
a slouchy
slouch
sock.
down.
Yes,
So
very nice.
But yeah, so that's toe up. You can use all of it. Whereas if you're doing top down, you kind of have to judge where your leg's going to end, because you can't keep on knitting your foot until you run out of yarn.
No.
So
So
that's another good example of when toe up is a good option. And having said that, one of my basic concerns with toe up is that cast off that you do at the end.
Yes.
Because you have got to make sure that cast off is loose enough.
Yes.
So that you can get it over your foot and onto your leg.
So with this one here, I think this is the Italian bind off. That's what it looks like to me. So you end up, I did get a bit of a flare,
But
Now,
you don't see that
when
it's
that's on your leg,
No.
though, you're not going to see it. So you really don't need to be too concerned about that. Once it's on, it looks fine, but it just doesn't look maybe as finished or as nicely finished when you're just looking at it. But they're for wearing, not looking at.
And this is the DRK Everyday Sock by Andrea Mowry. This is the child version. So what I did, this is a toe-up sock. And when I got to the cuff, this is a tubular bind off because I did the setup rows first. So what I did when I got to that pink where I was doing the setup rows and I was doing the sewn bind off, I switched. I did this on a 2.25 millimeter needle. I went up to a 3 millimeter needle for the top of this to make sure that that was going to give me enough stretch to get over well, these are for Zoe, to get over her leg. So that's one thing that you can do there. And when you're doing top down, you can do a tubular bind on. Yes. I have done that, or a tubular cast on. I guess it's not bind on. I have done that. A German twisted cast on works. I've never had a problem with it being too tight.
No, that's my favorite cast on.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot easier to get that measurement right when you're doing top down as opposed to going toe up. So,
okay. And then I guess we can move into talking about a few styles. So then the next two components that you're going to need to be concerned about with your sock is what type of a toe are you going to use and what type of a heel. So let's talk toes first.
Okay.
The most common toe, I don't know if it's the most common, but a common pattern element will be the wedge toe. And I don't think we even have examples of the wedge toe because it's not our favorite toe. We like a rounded toe, and we have a couple of little recipes that we use for
because we both do it a little different.
Yeah, but the round. I was trying to find, this one is a rounded toe, but I don't have a wedge toe to show. So basically, I know what I did. I was going to say, I know what I did the last time we filmed this. Okay, a wedge toe will look like this. This is actually the heel of my sock, but I can show you. So this is a wedge toe. We do not have toes that are shaped this way on our feet. So what we like to do is a rounded toe.
Well, to be fair, we don't really have toes that are
rounded either, but we like the way the sock looks.
And there is patterns for an anatomically correct toe, and you can do it kind of in the shape of your toes. I just stick to the rounded toe, and even doing them for all my kids and granddaughters, I basically use the rounded toe.
Yes.
So now, even doing the rounded toe, there's variations because Kelly and I both do ours differently.
Yes, a little different.
Mine's a little bit deeper. So that one's not a good one to show because you had rows there before.
I added rows, yes.
But this one.
Yeah, that one's fine.
So you can see, like, there's my toe and there's Kelly's. So Kelly's toe is shorter than mine, and neither one of them is correct or not correct. They're both fine. But what is going to make a difference is where you start that toe, depending on if you're doing it with more rows or fewer rows.
Yes.
Right? Obviously, I'm going to start mine sooner because there's more rows in the toe. Kelly's going to start hers a little bit later.
Yeah.
So, and those are all measurements that you will learn.
Yeah.
The more that you knit.
Take notes.
Yep.
And then you'll know for your next ones. Lots of knitters keep little books of sock notes, measurements of people's feet, things that they like to do, little techniques that they use, tips, tricks. Feel free to start jotting all of those down when you're in your little sock journey, and then you'll get more familiar with what you want to do. There's a few other types of
well, you said before that you had a different toe up
yes, I use a different recipe for the toe up. The toe up that I like to use, it's actually a free recipe that's on Ravelry, and it's the seam free rounded toe up by Lynn Ashton. It's lengthy, but this is the effect that it gives, because what you don't get, I don't know how well I can show this. I'll do some close-ups on some of these too. So this is one that I'll remember for a close-up. So you get a nice rounded toe, but what you don't get is, okay, in this instance, on this toe, you can see on the side of the toe that I have like a 4-stitch sort of seam on this, and that's a toe down, cuff down sock. Okay. This one on the toe up, I'll turn the sock sideways, no seam. So it's really comfortable on your foot. There's no seam whatsoever.
When I do my toe up, I just do the exact reverse of the shaping that I do for top down. So basically my toe on both socks looks identical.
Yes.
So
okay.
Now, we did have someone ask a question about that they said that they were knitting socks for a family member, and the family member didn't like the feel of the lifted stitches that they'd done in a toe-up sock. So you're going to have increases on the socks somewhere.
Yes.
When you're starting the toe, because unless you were doing like a square toe, there has to be. So if the person is really sensitive, Kelly's would have a few less pickups. The only other thing that I could suggest is that you might want to do the toe inside out so that the reverse stockinette stitch is on the outside of the sock.
You have one there, do you not?
No, that's just a garter stitch heel, so it's still garter stitch on the inside. And then the stocking stitch part would be the part that's against the person's foot. Now, I know there are some people that do knit their socks in and wear them inside out because they don't like the feel of the purl ridges from the reverse stockinette. So they wear their socks inside out so that the stockinette part is on your foot. So that's the only thing that I can think of that, because you can't get away from having a certain amount of increases or decreases at your toe.
No.
It's the only way to shape it.
I feel too, though, I'm wondering if they were using fingering weight or were they using a heavier sock yarn?
Yeah,
because
I don't.
I feel like I'm more skin sensitive than you are for sure. And I've never felt the ridge inside my socks. So
this is another, I should put it on the block. This is another toe construction.
The umbrella toe, right?
Yeah. So this sock is the Get Shorty Goes to Prom by Irene Designs. So this one, this was a top down. So this one, your decreases are wedged. Like they're not at the what do you say, the two sides of your foot. It's just they're evenly spaced out around the foot. So but you do get a really nice rounded toe with that.
You do.
So again, so that's just another option. And I think I've used that a couple of times. But again, then you've got kind of more rows of decreases. So if you're really sensitive, maybe you wouldn't like the feel of that. Personally, I don't feel them. So
no.
So that's a nice toe to use too.
Okay. So that covers toes. Moving into the heel of the socks. So the way I learned, the most common method, and you referred to this earlier, is the heel flap and gusset. So you knit down the leg of your sock. You then knit you're then only knitting on the heel needles, and you, in some way, shape, or form, and there's many ways to do it. There's either a knit one, slip one, which gives you a slipped bit of a ridge, so a thicker heel flap. There's
the eye of partridge, which
you're alternating,
offsets those knit ones, slip ones,
so you get sort of a little bit of a diamond pattern. But anyway, so you create this flap, and then once you have this flap, and it's generally about 30 rows long because there's about 16 stitches on either side. Or 32. 32. I was thinking 15 or 16.
Depending on the size of the sock, because I find when I do them for my husband or my sons, I do 36. So you've got 18.
So you're picking up 18.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and that determines the depth of your heel.
Yes. So that's this part here. So once you do the heel flap, then you've got to move into the heel turn. This sock is Hope and Sunshine by Tracy Miller, and it's got, and I haven't done one of these for a long time, it has actually got a square heel turn.
Yes. So
more often than not, you see more of like a wedge heel turn. I know I've got some of those somewhere, but
I'm looking.
Oh, here's one.
You want one?
Yep. So I'll just hold it this way. So the wedge is not square across the top, and it just kind of goes out in a triangle shape. So, and it's just a matter of how you do that heel turn. So this one again is more like a triangle, and then this one, if I take it off the needle, you can see it's more like a square. And again, both are fine, depends on what you like to do. It depends on what whoever you're knitting them for likes the feel of. I don't mind either one of them. I think these look a little funny to me when I'm looking at them, but when they're on, they're fine. Whereas this looks more like what I expect a sock to look like.
I do find that a heel flap and gusset is a little, takes up a little more space in your shoe.
Yeah.
There
are some heel flaps that are out there now too, where they don't do that the slip knit, so you get a more smooth heel flap and not as thick. And that, if you've gotten trouble with it in your shoes, that might be a better heel flap to do. Because this one here, and I know yours were different, this one here, the actual heel flap is on the bottom of the sock, so it's on the bottom of your heel, whereas the part that's going to be tight in your shoe, this part around your ankle, is actually all done in stocking stitch. Whereas yours is the opposite.
Yeah.
Where you've got the...
You'd think I could have been more prepared. Now I'm on the sock blocker upside down. We'll get there. We'll get there.
That's okay.
We don't...
Well, that one even shows. In this one here, your heel flap is down the back of your ankle. And then in this one, it's on the sole of your foot, or of your heel.
And this one, the heel flap is at the back. And then it's plain on the bottom.
Yeah.
So yours is almost like a reverse of mine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this heel pattern, or this sock, this is the adjustable toe-up socks by Jana Knits a Lot. And I did that one because it was adjustable and I wanted to use all of the yarn. So.
And I don't remember what this heel what I did for that. I'd have to look at my notes in Ravelry.
Well, it's all going to be linked. Yep.
Okay. Now, other heel types. The next one I want to talk about, because it's my favorite, it's the Flegel heel. So it has a unique construction in that you're increasing stitches at the bottom here on your back needle. You increase to a large number, and then you end up with this. It's really hard to show it on a sock blocker, but when you do the heel turn, what you end up with is this clever little wedge that fits the back of your heel. Things I like about the Flegel heel is I have a high instep, high arch. So I like the space that this gives me. Things that I don't like about the Flegel heel is that if you are trying to do something where you have that contrast heel like that, the Flegel heel isn't going to give you that like nice traditional sock look. It does look, I think it looks a little bit wonky in a contrast color. These are fine, but they're not my favorites. But where I think the Flegel heel shines is, okay, you can show that one. It's the same
so this
thing.
is a Flegel heel too, but what Andrew Mowry has done, where you're doing all these increases, she's incorporated that rib right into it. So the only thing that's actually in the stockingette stitch,
yeah,
you
and
see
it
it
might
on
show
yours
a little
too,
bit better there in the lighter color.
is the actual heel turn.
So it's such a nice finish. And so if you're doing an all one color sock, highly recommend the Flegel heel. This is an excellent fitting sock, and it's just gorgeous.
And this was another one, and I don't know what the heel is called, but this is a sock. It's called Vanilla is the New Black by Anna Fletcher.
Oh, that's right. That had a very unique heel.
So there, and you knit, this is knit top down. So there's that heel there. So this is, I mean, this is nice too. And when you're doing a heel that's incorporated into the sock, such as the Flegel heel or the heel flap and gusset, when you're done your sock, you're done your sock.
You're done.
If you're doing an afterthought heel, you've still got to go back and then finish heels after you either Kitchener your toe or bind off your top stitches. So anyway, this was, and I actually quite like the fit of this, and it does give quite a bit of room in the gusset here. So if you do have a high instep, that would be a good pattern to look at. And I know she's got a variety of different ones. There's some that are ribbed. Yeah, it was an interesting sock to knit. I like the way it fits. It's nice to it's nice to do things different so that you're not knitting something the same all the time. So, and then the one other heel that we've come across too is the one that Irene from Irene Design uses in some of her socks, and it's called the Strong heel. And so this is in this pattern
very fun
here.
To knit.
It is, and this is top down. So it was very fun to knit. And again, when you're done the sock, you're done the sock. So that's another one that's a good one to try. So I have it done in this one and in my Get Shorty Goes to Prom. So.
And then the heel type that probably both of us use the most is actually the Afterthought heel. And with the Afterthought heel, you do get that very traditional, looks like every sock you've seen. If you want to do a contrast heel, So you cut into your knitting. Yes, you do. You cut
that's
into
right.
your knitting.
One stitch only.
One
just
stitch only, and then you pick out the rest. And
so there's an example of that.
yeah, but this is just what gives you
It
that.
does, if you're doing a self-striping or a pattern, it keeps your pattern going all the way through the sock. It doesn't break up the pattern, because when you're doing some of those other heels, such as the strong heel or the fleagle, you're increasing and you're going around, so it kind of breaks up the sequence of your stripe.
Yes, like here's
So
a perfect example of, well, this was a heel flap and gusset, but that doesn't matter. But you can see how, so in this particular yarn, a pattern was established across the foot. Once you get into here where you're doing the heel flap and gusset and your stitches have increased, it changes the pattern.
because your stitch count increases.
Because your stitch count has altered.
So
So
your
I
repeat
ended up
changes.
with something that looks completely different up here. If you're okay with that, that's great. And that's going to happen. But if you wanted to maintain this pattern all the way up, what I could have done, instead of doing that, I could have put in an afterthought heel and maybe found a complementary color that would have matched. Okay. I also have a tutorial for the afterthought heel, because it's a fairly in-depth process. I mean, you are basically knitting, what you're doing is you're knitting a tube like this. So your tube would look like that, and then you're going to cut across there and knit this heel in afterwards. So the tutorial, I'll put the link above here if you are so inclined. Noelle taught me that method, so it should be called Noelle's method of an afterthought heel. And
because it's not afterthought, it's a forethought after heel.
knit.
A forethought after.
After knit.
A forethought knit after.
Knit after, yes. You think about
Because
it
you have
ahead
to
of
think
time.
about where you're going to put it.
Yes.
And the nice thing about this heel too is you can do it whether you're doing toe up or top down,
Yes.
because the heel's identical either way.
And it's also a good idea, like if you don't specifically know who you're knitting the sock for, you can basically just knit yourself a tube sock.
Yep.
And then you can find out who you're going to knit it for, and that's where you can insert it. It works particularly well for like these self-striping yarns. This is another timber yarn. It's this gorgeous
I know
colors.
that's what that is.
Serendipity.
Yep.
So you can basically knit your tube, and then you can decide. So once you're using the self-striping yarns, basically it's never going to interrupt a stripe. You will get to choose where you're putting that afterthought heel in. That's why we like it.
Yeah, and one thing with the afterthought heel, a lot of people find that it doesn't give them enough depth. So what we do, if I'm doing them for me, I usually do an extra 4 or 5 rows before I actually start the decreases. Like you kind of go through, and once you cut, you pick up your stitches along there. So if you do some stocking stitch rows first, and depending on how many you do, depends on how much extra you get in there. I know when I'm doing them for my husband or my sons, I do 7 rows before I start the decreases. But if I'm doing them for me, I do 4 or 5. So, and I think you do a couple of extra too before
I do
you start.
5 for myself, and I will do 7 for a man's sock. But and again, I have the high arch, and this works perfectly for me. I've never felt that it was pulling stitches too tight across the top of my foot.
Yeah, and you can do a contrast color even when you're doing a heel flap and gusset. You just don't get the same look as that cut in with a heel, right? Because you're not going to take, that's right, and you're not going to take the gusset stitches into the contrast color, so it does look slightly different, but you still can do it.
Yep.
So, and then the other heel that is out there is a short row heel, and there's various different short row heels. You can do it using German short rows. You can do it using the shadow wrap, which is a type of short row. So, and then this one I just did, I think I did German short rows here, but instead of doing just a stocking stitch heel, I did a garter stitch heel. So again, you can do that as well.
It's a really pretty yarn.
This is the Mondine.
It's pretty.
So, and then you can also, I know I have an example here of the shadow wrap heel, just to kind of show you what that looks like.
I think these piles of socks here, we should have counted how many pairs of socks we have here with us today.
So here's, I'm stuck on my, there we go. So there's a shadow wrap heel. And the nice thing about the shadow wrap heel is both sides look relatively the same.
With the
when you're doing German short
row.
rows, they look a little bit different on each side. But if you do shadow wrap, it looks basically the same on each side. So now the disadvantage of the shadow wrap is you really can't add in extra rows there to increase that gusset.
No.
Now I'm okay with it. I'm fine with it. Again, I guess you would just want to make sure that you had enough stitches like in the leg of your sock so that it's not going to be tight to get that on.
Yes.
Okay. So does that cover heels?
I think so. I think so. Okay. So now you have put in all of this work and you haven't even knit a stitch.
I know, but we need to.
You still need to find a pattern.
But you need to talk about cuffs too.
Oh, we didn't talk about cuffs?
We didn't talk about cuffs.
Okay, let's talk about cuffs.
Okay, so cuffs. Well, this is where you can really get creative.
Yes.
If you're just going to do a plain sock, you can put like a little fancy cuff in there, and it makes all the difference. So like in the case of this one, and this was a top-down sock, all I did was I did a tubular cast on with my contrast color, and then did a knit one, purl one twisted rib, and just that little tiny bit just gives that little bit extra to the sock.
If you are doing, this is a pattern that is very widely popular on Instagram. I've knit a few pairs. This is the jelly roll sock, and this has a rolled top, which is really fun and interesting. The rolled top on a short sock really ensures that that sock is going to stay up. There's no slipping down or disappearing into the shoe, and you're just knitting an extended stockinette row, and then when you let go of it, it wants to roll, and then you add in a second color. So that's a fun cuff on a short sock. And
here's a mock cable. You can do a mock cable, which sounds more complicated than it is, but there's a mock cable just on the top of that sock, and it just looks like, I don't know, a little bit extra. Now that sock would be perfectly fine if you just had it plain like this. In this case, this is Rusamine by Kua Coffee, and this technique here is called Estonian inlay. But I mean, that sock would look perfectly fine just with the mock cable cuff, and then just moving into a total vanilla sock for the rest of your pattern. So, and then when you're going, this is an experiment sock that I just did. I've talked about it on Tuesdays, but this was again one of those ones where I wanted to use up all of the yarn, but I didn't want to stop and figure out where I was going to put a heel or do a heel. So what I did in this case, I want that on my phone.
And I'm anxious to try one of these myself now, because you said it's worked really well.
I don't mind it at all. I've worn it inside my Blundstones and it's been fine. So this one was toe up so that I could use all of the yarn. So I started with just like a plain stocking stitch toe, and then for the length of my foot up until past my ankle bone, I did knit 2 purl 2 rib on one half of the sock, and I did plain stocking stitch on the other half of the sock. And then when I got up just here, so past my ankle, I did about 30 rows of just knit 2 purl 2 rib to kind of bring that
snug it into the heel.
Yep.
Or the ankle.
Yep. And then I went to stocking stitch and I just continued knitting. And this sock yarn seemed to have a lot of stretch, so I didn't even increase stitches. And then for my top, I thought I'd do something a little different, and I just did a little picot edge, which is just doing yarn over, knit 2 together around. That gives you your turning row. Then you do a few more rows of stocking stitch, and then you just tack it down after. And that used all of my yarn, and I actually don't have a problem wearing that sock at all. So I didn't have to worry about where I was going to put the heel. So I could just continue to knit to a certain point, do some rib, and then do some stocking stitch. So, and I think kind of a design like that would be a really good design for kids too. Because you could even actually do rib the whole way, kind of like a tube sock.
Yes.
And it would fit them for a whole lot longer.
Yeah.
So.
And then there is the good old twisted rib, which is something that you do a lot of.
I do a lot, yeah.
I don't. I do a lot of this. I do the knit 2 purl 2. The good old knit 2 purl 2.
Yeah, and it's perfectly fine. It makes a nice rib for the top of your sock. It's a little bit faster to do than knit 1 purl 1.
Yes. I don't like to knit 1 purl 1.
So.
Ever.
And then this is another, this actually, there's a pattern in Ravelry that's free. It's for the maker's cuff, and it's kind of hard to see in that dark yarn, but it's like,
fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like rib, but with like a little bit of lace pattern in between it. So again, the rest of the sock's just plain stocking stitch, so that little bit of rib at the top just kind of dresses up your sock.
Yeah, the one thing that we do want to mention too, when we're talking about, I want that on here. When you're talking about switching up color work in your rib, here's a little tip.
Oh,
After
yeah.
you've changed your color work, instead of the row of your color work here, don't do your knit 2, purl 2, or whatever your established pattern is. Knit the entire row in that new color. And what that will give you is a sharper, cleaner edge. If you don't do that, what you will find is that in the purl bumps, you're going to
I think
see
you can almost see it in this better because the colors are darker.
colors are darker. Yeah.
So every time I started a new color, I knit the first
knit the
row
whole row
before I did the knit 2, purl 2.
Yes. So then you don't get the purl bumps
And
with
this
the
is
colors
actually
changing.
this is the same, but this is knit 1, purl 1.
That's right.
But exactly the same thing. You knit
Yeah.
the first before you go back to your rib pattern.
Yeah.
So
And sometimes designers will tell you that, and sometimes they won't. And that's entirely up to you, what you're okay with.
and here's an even fancier cuff. So this cuff stitches were picked up around the top because if you see underneath, it's still got the knit 1, purl 1 rib, and then the stitches are picked up around to do this kind of lacy looking cuff.
Very nice.
So.
That's cute.
I think is that it for cuffs? There's so many socks here. I think that's it for cuffs. Again, there's nothing wrong with just a plain knit 2, purl 2 rib. Even a knit 3, purl 1 is a nice rib.
Yes.
Yeah, and you could actually, there's a lot of free stitch patterns, even if you just go onto the internet and you look up knitting stitch patterns.
Yep.
So if you look up any rib patterns, because I think unless you're going to do like a fold over or something, it's nice to have that rib just to make sure that you've got something to keep your sock up. But you could look at any rib pattern and kind of incorporate that into the top of your sock just to give it a little bit extra. So.
Okay, now can we talk patterns?
Yes, now we can talk
Now
patterns.
we can talk patterns. Patterns, gosh, where to start? So there are the basic sock, which is lovingly called the
vanilla
sock, is just a plain sock. It's nothing fancy.
Here,
and that's
here's
the basic
vanilla sock.
That's the basic recipe, the most basic recipe for a sock.
Yeah.
From there, every sock is based.
It's based
loosely
on
on
the
this.
same. Yes. Yeah.
It's what you're changing is the design elements in your sock. You are either adding lace, you can add mosaic, you can add color work. So let's talk about some lace examples first, maybe. I do not do a lot of lace socks.
Well, I do some summer ones. So this is a pair by This Handmade Life, and it's just got this little lace pattern that all goes through. And this is a Mondim sock yarn. So you can see it's just got a heel flap and a gusset, but what really stands out on this sock is just the lace pattern that only goes across the top of the foot. But this pattern came with actually 2 patterns in one. So this was the other variation of that pattern. And this one just incorporates a little bit of that lace pattern just at the top of the sock. And then the rest of the sock this is actually not a self-striping yarn. This is actually a pattern where I striped the yarn. So I've got 2 different yarns there. So this little pink again is actually a Regia. It's baby's first Regia, I think, or baby's first sock yarn.
Yeah.
So and this just has a little bit of rib incorporated up at the top of the sock, or sorry, a little bit of lace incorporated at the top of the sock. I think I have one more lace one here. These are called Meerschaum, and they were in one of the Lina books. So this pattern kind of has an all over. It's a full sock and it's kind of got an all over lace pattern. And then it's also got a little bit of variation up here in the cuff. So the start of the cuff is knit 1, purl 1, but then when you go into this corrugated, it's all knit, but it's just switching color work. So there's a couple of different things all incorporated into one sock. So.
Just looking for more lace.
Right, well, that one is lace at the.
Yeah, that one's lace at the top.
This Get Shorty one. This is Get Shorty Goes to Prom. So this is Get Shorty Goes to Prom, and it's just got lace kind of down the center of the foot. And then this is, we didn't talk about this. This is a different little cuff, the little picot cuff, but this is done with Samoyed yarn just to give it that little bit of fluff. And we have actually knit socks, I gifted them, that held this yarn together with a strand of the Samoyed, and they made absolutely gorgeous. You could wear them in boots, but they would have absolutely made gorgeous house socks. I have to knit myself a pair now because I gave the other ones away.
Okay. And then moving on from there, there's color work socks.
Mhm.
So a couple of ways to approach the color work. So this is a pair. There's lots of color work patterns that have the color work across the entire sock. But what I might suggest, if you're just starting out with color work, try to find a pattern that just has a little bit of color work down at the bottom of the foot. And then this one was just color work at the top. Generally, it will tell you to go up in needle size. So if we're knitting this one, for instance, in 2.25, I would have gone up to a 2.5 for this. This is where I'm going to find that if I'm going to run into difficulties, this is where the color work difficulty is going to be, because this piece here has to go over that high instep that I have. And these socks worked out beautifully. These are the garden, sorry, I'll have to link it. Garden something or other socks. And this is the Leo and Roxy yarn. I love these socks.
But yeah, they're pretty.
Really pretty.
And these are just another couple of examples. So this is a sock by Natalie Sheldon, and this pattern is called Charlotta the Fourth. So it's just got your color work up here and then a little bit down at the toe. If you didn't want to do this amount of color work up at the top, you could just do one of the pattern repeats and your color work would end there. And it would still give your sock, like, it would still look amazing. It just depends on how much color work you want to do. And then this is another example. These socks are called On the Fence, and this is a pattern by Anna Lang. And this color work is only up at the very top and then down here before you start your toe. And then this is a patterned sock yarn that's in the middle here. And that just that little tiny bit of color work at the top and at the bottom, like, just, I think, really makes those socks shine, or the socks shine. those socks shine. But anyways, they were fun to knit. And this taupey color here is also a Patton's Croy color. So they do have an amazing variety of solids as well as, and the solids are kind of heathery.
Mm-hmm,
so they're nice. And then I gotta find these ones. Then you can do a totally all over color work sock, because the ones that we've showed so far, there's not really color work all over the foot of the sock.
Mm-hmm.
So this is another pattern by Natalie, and it's called what's it called? Christmas Tree Farm.
Yes.
Okay, so this one is done and the pattern is all over. It's on your heel. Well, it's not on the heel. It's on the bottom of your foot, the top of your foot, the leg. And then I put in a little bit of a fancy cuff up there too with the mock cable. This yarn has glitter in it, so it's got everything.
It's got it all. That sock's got it all.
So those were fun to knit. And color work's the same thing as doing stripes. Like, it's like you just want to get to the next thing.
The next
to see
little
what it
bit of your
like.
chart. Yes.
Yeah.
They're hard to put down. Really hard to put down.
And this is I did 2 pairs of these. My daughter Jacqueline has a pair. Hers I did with a gray as the base, and then all of her trees I held a light fingering weight yarn with a strand of mohair. So it just looks like a snowy forest. So
that's beautiful.
That was a fun knit.
Okay, and then, oh, I guess I had these to show for color work too. I'll just put this one on my hand. I'm running out of blockers here.
I know.
This was a pair for Easter. So I patterned, just took some graphing paper and patterned some little bunnies and knit them onto a little pair of shorty socks. Used an afterthought heel, and this one has a fancy rib too, that we could have talked about. It's a laced rib. This one's a little tricky to get on my foot. This one's fine. The other sock is a little snug. I loosened up when I did this bind off, and I didn't go back and repeat. But color work again. So if you want to start it on your foot, it's a little easier to get onto your foot. So something else that you might do with color work, or a type of color work, is mosaic. And this is an all over mosaic sock by Lisa Ross. The pattern name escapes me. I'm gonna have to remember which ones we showed. But I love this. So she's got a lot of elements in this sock going on as well. So she's got the rolled cuff going on, which I love, and then this Grecian key mosaic all over the sock. I love these socks.
Yeah, they're nice.
And this is using the Leo and Roxy Basics yarn in all of the colors.
And their colors
really
go
like.
So well together.
Yeah, this really pair well. So this was a lot of fun, and she's even carried that pattern down onto the heel. Very clever pattern, very clever. And mosaic is especially nice because you are doing color work. I mean, very intricate looking color work. You're only ever using one yarn at a time. So unlike color work like this, where you're actually carrying the yarns behind you, this one I'm only ever working with one yarn.
Yep.
That's the method of mosaic. So you could look for some of those socks.
Oh yeah, because
That's mosaic.
this is mosaic. This is a different style. So this is actually a take on Andrea Mowry's Shifty pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So I just took the pattern and put it into a sock. So it's all mosaic knitting. So this is a little bit different than what Kelly's was, because this one incorporates purl stitches into the mosaic. And so then down at the bottom, because I didn't want those purl stitches down at the bottom of the foot, when I got to those, I just switched back to stockinette just for the stitches on the sole of the foot.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And something else too, when you've purchased a pattern, or if it's a free pattern, and there's lots of free patterns on there as well, don't feel that you are held tight from beginning to end. So maybe that pattern has a particular heel type that you found that you don't like as much. Substitute it for your own heel type. You don't like the
cuff
cast
or toe.
on or the cuff.
Yeah.
Once you have determined what it is that you like in your socks, then you are the master of your knitting. You can do anything you want to do with that sock, change up anything, modify anything. Something else too, like if you have no idea what you want to knit for a sock, just knit every kind of pattern you can fit onto a sock and you'll get a crazy striped sock. This is a self-striping yarn from Knit Picks. I think it's Time Traveler, maybe not. Anyway, and it just has different stitch patterns all the way through the sock.
Yeah,
it created
but that makes it fun to knit it.
Created sort of a scrappy looking sock, but just, I don't know, just some texture. And then something else that I had, I know you've got something there, but beads. This pattern was called Don't Worry, Bead Happy. And it's added beads into the leg of the sock. And it's got a fun little rib down here, a broken rib actually on the foot, and just tiny little details.
Yep,
this is Rose Hill yarns again too.
Yep.
So this is one of their half skein sets, but it adds so much. So again, like you can just do whatever you want to these
I know,
socks.
and I actually have a pair that I did with beads, but in the case of the ones that I did, the bead was only at the very top of the cuff, so you only kind of put them in the cuff.
Okay.
So then, but it
Fun.
just gave that little bit of sparkle at the top of the sock.
Yeah.
And so there's also all sorts of textured socks, and things are a little different. Like this is called the Brookline sock. So the texture's all up here. I'm not quite sure what that stitch is called, but it kind of goes down a little bit into the foot, so that was fun to do. And then just giving a little pop of color with something a little bit different. Like, because when you do contrast, you don't have to do contrast everything. You could do just a toe or just a heel or just the top of your sock.
Yes.
Like just something to give it that little bit extra. And we all have tons of little bits and pieces of yarn left over, and that's kind of nice ways to use them up.
Yes.
So
I like this idea too. I do this a lot too, where you've just done just a couple of rows at the top.
Yep.
To tie
I think it's like the cast on and one row.
Toe.
Yep.
This is that Eye of Partridge heel that we were talking about earlier too, is it not? It looks like it.
Yes.
I think you can see. I'm going to try to do a close-up of that too.
This sock yarn, this is Croy from like, it's got to be 30 years ago.
Really?
That I had, yes. Yep. And so I just thought, okay, well, it'll be nice because it'll show up the stitch pattern really well.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
it's
I really like
beautiful
it.
Sock.
So, okay.
Okay. What are we at?
Is that it? Well, we know there's all sorts of style. Again, like we were just saying, that if you find a pattern but you don't like the heel or toe or the cuff, you can change that. I would say the only caveat in that to be wary of is if you're changing a toe up to a top down, because your pattern, the way your pattern lays might, especially if it's color work. If you need to read the color work chart the other way as well.
Absolutely.
If it's texture, you need to look at how that texture is going to work up if you knit it in reverse.
Okay.
So, okay. So now that you've made your socks, now you've got to look after them. Now, I don't usually block my socks after I first made them.
I don't.
I'll put them on blockers like this just to take a picture, but I usually don't block them because they're going to mold to the person's foot when they put them on.
Yes.
I mean, if I was giving them for a gift, I find that actually if I leave them on these for like a couple of days, you take them off and they're pretty much the shape of,
Yes.
unless they're the Andrea Mowry DRK everyday sock that's all over rib, in which case you're never going to make that look like a sock when you take it off.
No, not ever.
But
not
it
ever.
fits wonderfully.
It does. It's a gorgeous sock. So,
but you're eventually going to get to the point where you have to wash your socks.
You will have to wash them.
So
what I like to use is the Tuft Woolens sock soap. It's specifically sock soap. I keep it on a cedar rack. It's going to fall off now. And I also have a little bin that I keep beside my washing machine, just a little plastic wash bin. And as the socks come down through the laundry, I just throw them all in there. I collect them. Once I have a bin full of socks, then I will decide it's sock wash day. And I hate sock wash day. It's not a hard job.
I don't mind it.
It's not even a hard job, but I guess it's just the concept of now I've got to wash all the socks.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what I do is I just start to fill my basin with very tepid water, and I'll just take this and I'll just kind of swish it around in my hands like this under the running water. It creates a little bit of a milky lather in your wash bin. And then I just start loading the socks and I put them all in there, squish them, scrunch them, let them soak in really well. And then I just kind of take them with my hand and I loosely start swishing them around. I leave them in there to soak for a little bit. And then I will take them out and I squeeze each one out. If it is a superwash yarn, I still put everything into little lingerie bags. You do an added step. You rinse yours.
I rinse them. Yeah.
I don't feel the need to rinse after I use it, but that's totally up to you and how you want to do things. And I put them into these little lingerie bags that I have. And if it's superwash, and I throw them in my washing machine just on spin cycle for a couple of minutes, and it just tosses all the water out. And then I just use hangers that have a bottom rail on it. I hang them in my laundry room. I flip the sock over. You have a little bit of variation.
Yeah, I have. Well, I do, like I said, I do the same as Kelly. The sock soap that I have is very similar. It's just not Tuft Woolens. But I do give them just a quick rinse. And then I kind of try
what is yours?
It's by a company called Woolen, and it's the same thing. It's called sock soap. Yeah, so once I do that, I do put them in the lingerie bag, except for the socks that are 100% wool.
Yes.
Because those ones I don't want any agitation. So for instance, this one, and this one are all Retrosaria Mondine, which is 100% Portuguese wool. And this one, I did at the beginning, this was the first pair that I knit with it, and I did kind of put them in just to spin, and there is a tiny bit of felting that's gone on in it. So I didn't want that to continue, so I don't do that anymore. So these ones, I just squish out as much water as possible, and I put them in a towel and roll it, and then press out as much water as I can, and then I put them back on the blockers to dry.
Get the shape.
And same with this. This is a sock yarn that I got out in Nova Scotia, and it's a more rustic-y yarn, so I didn't want it to have all the agitation. So that one, I just do the same thing, squeeze out as much water as possible and put it on the blocker to dry. Now these ones, I don't know, have you washed yak?
I have.
So these are just, I haven't worn them yet. These are, what are they called? Row by Row Sampler Socks by Irene Designs. And this is done in the Regia yak sock yarn.
Yes.
Now this is my first pair that I've done with yak, so I haven't washed them yet, and I haven't worn them yet, but
I have, and I will admit mine have made it even through the washing machine.
Okay, so I don't need to be too...
No, this is a pair that I have. This is from the Ravenswood.
Okay.
And so this is yak sock yarn. There's 10% yak. I don't know how much yak is in there.
I honestly can't remember. It's probably about 10%.
These are some of my favorite socks too.
Okay.
These are really well worn socks.
Well, I really like these, and I want to make sure that
soft. They are so soft. Yak has an inherent darker base to it too.
Yeah, because this is a rosy color, but you can see like
it's a
kind of like
base.
the brown undertone. Yeah.
So I have made they've even made their way through a washing machine inadvertently a couple of times. So I'm not super careful.
Okay.
I do have a cautionary tale. These were my favorite socks. Completely felted. These were the Melisandre socks, and I used a yarn that had a high Alpaca. They used to have stitch definition, and now they are just felted almost to the point of I cannot wear them. So that's a cautionary tale. Don't do what Kelly did. These made it through the wash. This was before I learned about hand washing my sock. This was early on in sock knitting. And then there's the storage. So
mine just get put in my drawer.
Mine do not. I like to have my socks done a certain way. So when I take my socks, I'll show you my little method. I take them like this. I flatten out my heels. I put them together like this. I fold up the toe. I fold down the cuff. I make this nice little sock sandwich. And then the sock sandwich goes into these tote bins that are up in my dressing closet. And this is what they look like. And I know that Noelle just throws her socks into a drawer, but I like mine to look like this.
Okay, but while Kelly is organizing and folding and doing all this, I'm knitting more socks.
Look at this beautiful little sock sandwich. I just like things to look a certain way. Okay. Oh dear. Again, do not do what Kelly does. You do you. But
no, and I actually had a pair, and this is another cautionary tale. And it was one of the sock yarns, because we didn't really talk about that. There are various sock blends that have cashmere in it. And I did get major felting, like to the point where that sock could have stood up by itself.
Yeah, these ones pretty much, yeah, they pretty much do.
So if you do use, and I mean, they're wonderful and they feel amazing, but if you do use that, even though the base of your yarn is a superwash merino, I would be very cautious as far as putting that cashmere even into just the spin cycle to get rid of the excess water. I think I'd go to the squeezing and laying
Put it out on a towel. You roll them up tight in a towel, and then you press down on the towel.
You can even put the towel down on the ground and step on it to get as much water out.
Yes, I do that too. Don't do that while you're wearing other socks.
No.
Those socks will get wet.
No.
Do that when you have shoes on or some house slippers. Okay, so we thought that we would share with you some of the reference materials that we use for socks. The first one that I have is a book. Actually, Kendall bought me this book, and it's the Knitter's Book of Socks, and it's by Clara Parks. This is a great reference tool, and I believe it comes with, I don't remember how many patterns, probably, she did an inscription too, to the best sock knitter I know. Love, Kendall. I think there's about 12 or 13, or sorry, nope, there are 20 sock patterns in this book. She goes in depth talking about the construction of the socks, talking about a lot of the details that we talked about here today, but a little bit more in depth and maybe put together a little more concisely than we did today as well.
Well, and I'm sure there's a lot of things in there that we haven't touched on, because we've only kind of talked about the things that we've done. There's lots of variations on things that you can do with socks.
So many other things, but that's a great book and available pretty widely. I know there are a few other books out there. There's lots of other books on socks, but that's just one
I
that
have a couple of books.
like.
I haven't. There was even like a fairly good one from Knit Picks that just had different variations, because it wasn't an actual sock pattern. It just gave you can do your heel like this, or you can do your toe like this.
Oh, there was a short one too,
because
I'm actually
Spectacular Socks. Or
yes,
and
I'm actually wearing some of those socks today too,
and
they're
so you
lace
could kind
pattern.
of put things together for yourself, and like just going on to YouTube and Googling. I know that Earth Tones Girl has some good sock tutorials. Very Pink Knits has a lot of good tutorials. So you can even just specify it to what you're looking
Roxanne
for.
Richardson.
Yes, Roxanne Richardson. If you're looking for like how to do a shadow wrap heel or how to do a German short row heel. I also like Suzanne Bryan.
Yes.
She does some really good tutorials. I think that's where I think I actually looked at her shadow wrap heel, because she even showed you how to do it so that you could like do a contrast color in the heel of a short row and not have to worry about carrying stitches across the top of the foot. So there's all sorts of good resources like that. And the more you do, the more you try, the more you're going to get to know what works for you and what you like.
Absolutely.
So
something else that we've come across recently that we think is a fantastic resource is the Craft Yarn Council website. Has a one-page printout that you can print that has all of the sock sizes, like
sock size based on shoe size. So if you don't know the person, you don't know how long you're knitting their sock, but you know what size shoes they wear, then you can go and it'll give you a rough estimate of the inches or centimeters that you need for that sock.
Because something that you want to be mindful of too is that you want to have a little bit of negative ease
Yes.
in this length. So if you're If your foot actually measures, say, 9 inches, you may want your finished sock to be 8.5 inches. You want a little bit of negative ease to snug that sock in. And then the other measurement for a foot that you're mindful of is the circumference around this part of the foot, like the widest part of the ball of your foot, right?
And this is like, my husband, Ross, made me these sock blockers. And like I've got this one, and this one actually, if the sock fits this perfectly, then the sock will fit my feet. So it's actually a
so you have
good
custom sock blockers.
So it's actually, so if I do them for the girls, I know that it has to be like
Longer.
they've got, it's got to be longer than this. So
okay, I think we've covered everything on our page, except we want to close this with a giveaway. So socks that we've talked about that we love to knit and love to wear.
Love to knit more than once.
Well, I don't know. I don't love it enough to knit
15
15 pairs of it, but you certainly did. And this is the Leo and Roxy work sock pattern.
Yes.
And we love this yarn is fantastic. We talked about it earlier. We love this yarn. We love this pattern.
Yep. And it feels so good on your feet.
Feels
it just
amazing.
It does
to wear. And it has, I mean, I've worn these and I've worn the heck out of these things, and they still look.
Yep. I know my kids have told me too that they're like
there's not even any any balls or anything on this. They're just really well. So we have one of these sets. Generous donation from Jolynn at Leo and Roxy Yarns. So this is the work sock set.
Yes. So it's the marled sock yarn, and then you get 2 minis. So this is Leo, and is this Caribbean?
I think so.
See here. Oh, cabana. So it does look like a Caribbean sea.
Oh, I'd like to be in a cabana in the Caribbean. Yes.
So.
Not wearing my socks.
No.
So
but knitting them.
So if you would like to make this beautiful sock set yours, what we would like you to do is below this video, if you
let us know what.
I can hear Roxy meowing at the door.
But let us know what your favorite sock pattern is that you've knit so far, or if you haven't knit any, let us know what pattern you're going to put underneath.
With. Yes. Yeah. And we should also mention our
sock along.
So
we have a sock along going for the entire year. Starts January 1st, goes to December 31st. At the end of every month, we draw 2 prizes, a pattern prize and a sock yarn prize. And then at the end of the year, we're going to have a grand prize. So the more times you get socks in there, the more chances that you have to win, because for every draw, we actually go back to the beginning of the year. So if you had a pair there in January, then they were getting counted in all the draws for the year.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, so get your socks in there. And as far as this goes, we'll leave this open until, I think we should draw it on when we do the pajama party. Yeah. So we're going to have a pajama party on the Tuesday knit chat that's right after Christmas. So that would be the 27th. And on that, just before we start that, we will draw the winner of the sock yarn prize for that. So
we have some other fun giveaways planned for that night too. So it's going to be a good night, a great night. So. Okay, well, I think that kind of covers.
Yeah, and if
it's not a master class.
No, it's not.
It's a long class, though. Hopefully you made it through, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Yeah,
we had a lot of fun sharing all.
Yeah, if you have a chance, come and join us in the Knit Chat Cafe on Tuesday nights. We have a wonderful time there with everybody every week. It's just goes by just like that.
It does. It does. We're in there for about an hour and 15 minutes, and I think it was last week. I thought it went particularly quickly, and I said, I can't believe that. We always think,
oh, we don't have anything to talk about, and then
oh, we have things to talk about. We always have things to talk about.
So, but anyway, take care, everybody. This airs before Christmas, so if we don't see you again, or you don't see us again before Christmas, have a wonderful holiday season, and
start knitting your socks for 2023.
That's right, because we are going to do it again in 2023.
Absolutely.
So take care and happy sock knitting.
Happy sock knitting. Although, also having said that, we're going to cut this out because I just lost my train of thought.
Anyways.
What did you say first? You said the
Okay. Hi. Got something in my eye. probably sock fiber.
Mohair?
I don't have it. I don't think oh, it could, I don't know.
I
No.
get mohair everywhere.
Anyway.
La 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 la.
Okay.